No, and the last response from Sean Wallace, who is the Department of Defense PR guy, he says only one of them had a rag in his mouth, which is just wrong. Now, why is this important? Because the evidence we see suggests that the death by asphyxiation is connected with the presence of this cloth, not only in the mouth, but going down the windpipe of the three people. Most likely, it was death by asphyxiation through choking, not hanging in a cell.
And now, a couple of these discrepancies are, whether the lights were dim or whether they were on or off, the number of interviews. I guess I'll let you go ahead and elaborate on the number of interviews, and then especially, please, the contradictions about the video footage from the cell block that night.
Well, that's right. Well, let's start with the video footage. That's an interesting thing, because in reviewing the NCIS report, one thing everybody was disturbed by was that there was no reference to the video cameras. And, of course, there were video cameras installed in the hallway that would have monitored everything, would have noted whether these people were, in fact, removed. And, in fact, we have the guards saying they were removed from the cell block. So, of course, that would have been documented. Whether soldiers monitoring the cells went back and forth after the time they allegedly died, that would have been documented. Their removal from the cells and them being taken to the clinic, that would have been documented. So there's no reference to any of that anywhere in the NCIS report, which is quite bizarre. And then when the point is raised and pushed by Seton Hall, the response that comes from the DOD's public affairs official is that, well, there was nothing of any interest in those videotapes. And you just have to sort of stop and ask, excuse me, how is that possible?
Well, even if they're pointed at the ground, that's interesting.
That's right. I mean, if they were disabled, if they'd been moved so they didn't capture anything, if they showed nothing, which is in fact what I think they would have shown, according to the theory that's advanced based on the watchtower guards, they would have shown just about nothing. And that would be extremely revealing because it would suggest a lot of things that the NCIS report claims occurred didn't in fact occur. So that is quite significant. Now, next, the critics, the principal critic of my story so far is a former Marine officer named Joe Carter, who's written at length on First Things, and his criticism has basically been to say that Horton cites these 5 tower guards and what they saw and what they observed, but the NCIS report is based on 50 different accounts of what happened. And how can it be that these 50 people are wrong and the 5 tower guards are right? He says it's 5 versus 50. Can't be, has to be that the 50 people are right and the 5 are wrong. Now, the problem with this is that, and Seton Hall does a good job of tracking this down, that, the 50 accounts are not, in fact, 50 accounts. It's 50 interviews. And this reflects the same people being interviewed over and over and over again, sometimes 3 and 4 different times. So it's not 50 different people. And in fact, if we look through these accounts and we see who contradicts or who gives a version of facts that really is at odds with what the tower guards give, it's 6 people. It is the Alpha Block guards, the 6 Alpha Block guards, who give a different account from the tower guards. What's interesting about that? Principally, this point. One day after they were initially interviewed, the NCIS gave formal criminal warnings to those same 6 Alpha Block guards, telling them, we think you're lying to us. And one of them was also warned that he was disobeying a direct order. In fact, we don't have copies anywhere of the statements that these people made before they were issued these warnings. We have copies only of the statements they made after the warnings were issued. So there was an intense coercion applied on these people to give a certain kind of account, and then that is the account that NCIS used. So it's extremely suspicious, but you just step back to the fact, who's more credible, the watchtower guards or the Alpha Block guards? the Alpha Block guards were deemed not to be credible by the NCIS itself. That's the starting point. 2, they were under immense pressure, including threats of bringing criminal charges against them unless they gave a certain account, which is another reason to believe that their account of what happened that evening was manipulated consciously by the people who were conducting the investigation.
Okay, so just to make sure that we're clear on this, 50 interviews becomes quite narrowed down because it's the same people being interviewed over and over again. Now, these other statements, aside from the guards, that you say don't contradict your witnesses, the guard tower guys outside.
Right.
Do they actually substantiate what your witnesses say, or they just don't make reference either way in a conclusive fashion, or how's that?
Well, for instance, the 6 are the ones who claim to have seen them hanging from their cells in the Alpha Block. Okay, that's directly contradictory to what the Watchtower people say. The others are mostly people who are in the clinic who talk about seeing the bodies when they come in and observe and describe them. Well, that's not in dispute. Of course, our people say that the bodies were delivered to the clinic, and that's where they were. So there's really not a difference in the presentation between the tower guards and the Alpha Block guards on that score.
Okay,
and those statements really don't contradict the tower guards.
Right. But they're sort of beside the point.
Yeah, that's right.
They don't really verify it either.
That's right.
Okay, now, so as far as the 6 guards, now, I guess the guy, Joe Carter there at First Things would say, well, look, it was their fault, right? They were supposed to be on guard on this cell block. These 3 guys committed suicide. They must have, told a version of the story that made themselves look pretty good to the initial investigators, and no wonder they were threatened and forced to then tell the truth, right?
Well, I would view this, I would think a criminal investigator would view that point quite differently. That is, these are people who have every reason to doctor the facts to try and get themselves off the hook, whereas the people in the towers have no concern. It really, it doesn't reflect negatively on them, whatever the facts were. So the ones on the inside, the Alpha Block guards, are the ones whose statements would have been more inherently suspect, and in fact were viewed as not truthful by the NCIS when it began its investigation. So, Joe Carter is saying it's sort of a test between the Alpha guards and the tower guards, and who do you think is more credible? And I'd say on objective legal criteria, there's no question but that the tower guards' testimony would be deemed more credible.
Right.
Because of no self-interest.
Right, yeah. The official story has it that it happened on the watch of these other guys. So, if it just comes down to they said and they said, it does seem pretty clear, who you'd have to side with just on the basis of that alone.
Now, Seton Hall really focuses in on one other fact that I had missed before, and that is that we know all these people were asked to write down statements immediately after the events, and many of them did write down their statements, and all those statements seem to have disappeared. There's no record.
Oh, you don't say.
They don't show up anywhere.
You do have they have it, Seton Hall has as a documented fact that they were asked to write something.
It is part of the standard operating procedure, and in the course of their interviews, several of them talk about sitting down and beginning to write their sworn statements. So we know, and from many accounts, that the preparation of these statements was begun. We also know that at some point down the road, people were told, stop, right? Don't do this anymore. Now, that's already extremely suspicious. Why is it that the command authority is saying, don't write up sworn statements?